For a moment we remained alone. Suddenly Bettia Reich, a relative who lived with us, entered the room. "Someone is knocking at the sealed window, the one that faces outside." It was only after the war that I found out who had knocked that night. It was an inspector of the Hungarian police, a friend of my father's. Before we entered the ghetto he had told us, "Don't worry, I'll warn you if there's danger." Had he been able to speak to us that night, we might still have been able to flee. But by the time we succeeded in opening the window, it was too late. There was nobody outside. The ghetto was awake. One after the other, the lights were going on behind the windows. I went into the house of one of my father's friends. I woke the head of the household, a man with a gray beard and the gaze of a dreamer. His back was hunched over from untold nights spent studying. "Get up, sir, get up. You must ready yourself for the journey. Tomorrow you will be expelled, you and your family, you and all the other Jews. Where to? Please don't ask me, sir. Don't ask questions. God alone could answer you. For heaven's sake, get up." He had no idea what I was talking about. He probably thought I had lost my mind. "What are you saying? Get ready for the journey? What journey? Why? What is happening? Have you gone mad?" Half asleep, he was still staring at me, his eyes filled with terror, as though he expected me to burst out laughing and tell him to go back to bed, to sleep, to dream, that nothing had happened. It was all in jest. My throat was dry, and the words were choking me, paralyzing my lips. There was nothing else to say. At last he understood. He got out of bed and began to dress automatically. Then he went over to the bed where his wife lay sleeping with the infinite tenderness, touched her forehead. She opened her eyes, and it seemed to me that a smile crossed her lips. Then he went to wake his 2 children. They woke with a start, torn from their dreams. I fled. Time went by quickly. It was already 4 o'clock in the morning. My father was running right and left, exhausted, consoling friends, checking with the Jewish council, just in case the order had been rescinded. To the last moment people clung to hope. There were women boiling eggs, roasting meats, preparing cakes, sewing backpacks. The children were wandering about aimlessly, not knowing what to do with themselves, to stay out of the way of the grown-ups. Our backyard looked like a marketplace. Valuable objects, precious rugs, silver candlesticks, Bibles, and other ritual objects were strewn over dusty grounds, pitiful relics that seemed never to have had a home. All this under a magnificent blue sky. By 8 o'clock in the morning, weariness had settled into our veins, our limbs, our brains, like molten lead. I was in the midst of prayer when suddenly there was shouting in the streets. I quickly unwound my phylacteries and ran to the window. Hungarian police had entered the ghetto and were yelling in the street nearby, "All Jews, outside, hurry!" They were followed by Jewish police, who, their voices breaking, told us, "The time has come. You must leave all this." The Hungarian police used their rifle butts, their clubs, to indiscriminately strike old men and women, children and cripples. One by one the houses emptied, and the streets filled with people carrying bundles. By 10 o'clock everyone was outside. The police were taking roll calls, once, twice, 20 times. The heat was oppressive. Sweat streamed from people's faces and bodies. Children were crying for water. Water! There was water close by inside the houses, the backyards, but it was forbidden to break rank. "Water, mother, I am thirsty." Some of the Jewish police surreptitiously went to fill a few jugs. My sister and I were still allowed to move about, as we were destined for the last convoy, and so we helped as best we could. At last, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, came the signal to leave. There was joy. Yes, joy. People must have thought there could be no greater torment in God's hell than that of being stranded here on the sidewalk among the bundles, in the middle of the street under a blazing sun. Anything seemed preferable to that. They began to walk without another glance at the abandoned streets, the dead, empty houses, the gardens, the tombstones. On everyone's back there was a sack, in everyone's eyes tears and distress. Slowly, heavily, the procession advanced towards the gates of the ghetto. And there I was, on the sidewalk, watching them file past, unable to move. Here came the chief rabbi, hunched over, his face strange looking without a beard, a bundle on his back. His very presence in the procession was enough to make the scene seem surreal. It was like a page torn from a book, an historical novel, perhaps, dealing with the captivity in Babylon or the Spanish Inquisition. They passed me by, one after the other, my teachers, my friends, the others, some of whom I had once feared, some of whom I had found ridiculous, all those whose lives I had shared for years. There they went, defeated, their bundles, their lives in tow, having left behind their homes, their childhood. They passed me by, like beaten dogs, with never a glance in my direction. They must have envied me. The procession disappeared around the corner. A few steps more, and they were beyond the ghetto walls. The streets resembled fairgrounds, deserted in haste. There was a little of everything: suitcases, briefcases, bags, knives, dishes, banknotes, papers, faded portraits, all the things that one planned to take along and finally left behind. They had ceased to matter. Open rooms everywhere, gaping doors and windows looked out into the void. It all belonged to everyone, since it no longer belonged to anyone. It was there for the taking, an open tomb, a summer sun. We had spent the day without food, but we were not really hungry. We were exhausted.